Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Now, are you thinking, here we go again? Another beatitude that at first just doesn't seem to make any sense at all. How many people do you know that would like to be known as meek? Not many, I'm sure, because meek is seen as weak. The meek person is assumed to be a wimp. But here again, as we look just a little closer, we find the usual way of looking at things can be so far out of whack. Meekness actually can reveal a hidden strength, a quiet confidence, a beautiful pathway to blessedness. The meek aren't the losers that we might expect. In fact, it turns out they're going to be the big winners. It's the meek who will inherit the earth. Two people in the Bible are noted for their meekness. One is Moses, indisputably one of the greatest leaders in all history. He's the one God used to deliver the Jews out of slavery in Egypt. And the other, of course, is Jesus. In his life and teaching, we could find so much about what meekness really means. An extraordinary demonstration of the meekness of Jesus took place here by the Sea of Galilee. After his resurrection, clothed in his new glorified body, Jesus came here to seek out the very disciples who earlier had panicked and abandoned him as he faced the crucifixion. The account is in the Gospel of John. It was after a long and frustrating night of fishing. 7 of the disciples had caught nothing. So Jesus begins by having a little fun. He yells out from shore to cast your nets on the other side of the boat. And they do. And they immediately pull in 153 fish. They rush into shore and they see Jesus had prepared a hot breakfast for them of bread and fish. Now, he did not use the occasion to taunt them or humiliate them for their cowardice. Instead, he restores them to his friendship and to his love. What a demonstration of the quiet strength of pure meekness. And at the very same time, he redirects their futures in a way that they were never the same. Jesus spoke about meekness in one of my favorite passages of Scripture, Matthew 11:29. There he invites anyone, just as he did the disciples by these shores, to have a brand new start. He said, "Come unto me, all you that labor and are heavy laden, I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, learn of me, for I am meek and lowly of heart, and you shall find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." This is a carpenter shop in Nazareth Village, just like it would have been when Jesus was growing up. As the son of a carpenter, he no doubt learned how to make yokes for the animals. And that brings us to a key point. It's one we touched on in a previous section, that the invitation of Jesus is not to a magical solution to all our problems. He speaks of our bearing his yoke. In essence, exchanging one yoke for another. And who wants to bear a yoke? But the point is not whether we're going to bear a yoke. Inevitably we will. The question is, what yoke are we going to bear? As for the yoke of Jesus, he doesn't sugarcoat what's going to happen, but he fashions that yoke so it fits just right for us. Even the very words of his invitation put us so much at ease. Come unto me, he says. There, he shows himself approachable, caring, and eager to relate to us. And the invitation to bear his yoke is so masterfully attuned to our deepest needs. There's no escape into some mystical realm. What can be more physical than a yoke? Now, it takes into account that we live in physical bodies, but it trains our minds as well as our bodies. The yoke of Jesus moves us into an endless adventure of learning and discovery. And for the cancer patient, part of that discovery, paradoxically, includes learning a new awareness of the gift of our bodies. How amazing, how frail, how complex. We come to marvel even in our infirmity at the words of the psalm that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. His yoke also brings us spiritual tranquility that we so deeply long for. You shall find rest for your souls. And notice who he invites. He welcomes the exhausted, those who are emotionally spent, those who are heavy laden. In my recent time of overpowering weakness, it actually reached the embarrassing point where one day I had to ask my granddaughter to twist a bottle cap off for me. I realized then that for me, the yoke meant that I had to take some time. And you know, it turned out to be 5 or 6 months, and I just had to stop. I had to refocus my fragile life and center around 3 words: wait, rest, and love. And there was so much I needed to learn from Christ about the meaning of all 3 of those words. Now, in the midst of such weakness, as we learn from him, we find that his yoke isn't a curse. It's not an unbearable load. It's really a helpful guide. His yoke changes our burdens to become our bliss. It changes our limitations to actually become our liberation. And those who accept it in meekness are being prepared for nothing less than to inherit the earth. We return to the shore of the Sea of Galilee, where Jesus appeared in his glorified, resurrected body to make that breakfast that we talked about earlier. Now, we don't know much about what heaven will be like, but the scriptures teach that those who want to follow the Lord and want to open themselves to his grace will be given a transformed body like his after death. Now, do you see what this means in practical terms? Nothing less than this. We can refuse to let a cancer diagnosis define us or our bodies. We've already been defined. We're part of the family of Jesus and part of the glorified, transformed humanity that he's already promised. And that glorified humanity in new bodies will, in the fullest sense, inherit the earth. We can only bow in awe before such a prospect. And through that very posture and attitude, we already begin to inherit the earth.